So you're telling this committee that the Biden administration, while they were letting all of these unaccompanied minors into the country, and as we've talked about today, they weren't keeping track of them, they issued these kids a hotline that they could call if they had trouble with the sponsor family that they were put with. And you're saying that 65,000 calls to this hotline designated to protect these kids went unanswered? Is that what you're telling this committee?
Yes, sir. Those calls spanned from, complaints about stale bread all the way to being abused, to one case where a child's call was reporting that grown men were coming into his room at night and they were touching him. Nothing happened with that call. That call went unanswered. I said that it was easier to get a child, yes, than to adopt a dog. You actually had to provide more paperwork to adopt a pet from a pet shelter than you did to sponsor a child.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing today on how NGOs facilitated the Biden border crisis. You can see our colleagues are very upset that we're having this hearing today. They don't want to talk about this stuff. They don't want to talk about the 300,000 kids that we still don't know where they are. They're upset that President Trump got elected. They're upset that he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do, and we're backing him up here in Congress. This is what the American people voted for because they saw 4 years of the carnage that these open border policies plagued on the United States. And we're talking about the NGOs that they used as middlemen to carry out their operations, like the Catholic charities they used to facilitate, normalize, and accelerate illegal immigration into this country. Ms. Hopper, you've worked closely with trafficking victims and survivors. I'd like to explore the role that the NGOs have played in enabling the trafficking and exploitation of unaccompanied alien children. Under the last administration, what safeguards were put in place to protect vulnerable unaccompanied children?
I previously discussed the post-placement welfare checks, which consisted of 2 phone calls. Again, if the sponsor didn't answer, the case was no longer followed up on. But there was also a notice of concern hotline where people could report concerns about the unaccompanied child's safety. But what this administration found was from August 2023 to January of 2025, 65,000 calls went unanswered. Those calls spanned from complaints about stale bread all the way to being abused, to one case where a child's call was reporting that grown men were coming into his room at night and they were touching him. Nothing happened with that call. That call went unanswered until this administration took office, went through those 65,000 calls, made follow-ups, conducted a welfare check, and now that child has been rescued and that sponsor has been arrested. These are the safeguards that were put in place, but accountability and oversight was not had.
So you're telling this committee that the Biden administration, while they were letting all of these unaccompanied minors into the country, and as we've talked about today, they weren't keeping track of them, they issued these kids a hotline that they could call if they had trouble with the sponsor family that they were put with. And you're saying that 65,000 calls to this hotline designated to protect these kids went unanswered? Is that what you're telling this committee?
Yes, sir.
Wow. That is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I believe you also said, Ms. Hopper, that according to your research, it was easier to adopt a pet or a dog than it was to get one of these children. Is that what you said?
I said that it was easier to get a child, yes, than to adopt a dog. You actually had to provide more paperwork to adopt a pet from a pet shelter than you did to sponsor a child.
Yeah, and think about it, guys. This is exactly why the American people are so upset. This is why they voted for the president, and this is why they voted for this agenda, to not only remove people from this country, to secure our borders, but to find these kids. I mean, this is completely atrocious in a day and age where we're starting to wake up to the realities of sex trafficking and what's going on with these kids. They let all these kids in. We still don't know where over 300,000 of these kids are. And you're sitting here testifying, saying that they gave a hotline for these kids to report if they were okay, if they needed anything, and 65,000 calls went unanswered. Do you know how many staffers the administration assigned to answering these phones and helping these kids?
One.
One staffer? Any idea how many hours a day this staffer was working?
No.
Maybe that's why there were 65,000 calls that weren't answered from these little kids, huh? Unbelievable. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from New Jersey, Ms. McGivern, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to start off by just advising that witnesses should definitely come here with the facts. One of the witnesses today stated that I was arrested, and that's a complete lie, and I want to put that on the record. Mr. Chairman, this hearing is a sham, and a complete disgrace. Just because Republicans don't want to see it doesn't mean it's not true. The charities the majority is targeting are doing the Lord's work, quite literally. Republicans are trying to misrepresent and undermine and attack the work of these charities due to assist the most vulnerable and underserved, all while quoting scripture from the Bible. No matter what narrative my colleagues across the aisle try to spin, the truth is that these religious organizations and other nonprofits are not political. They seek to provide aid to those who are fleeing violence and seeking asylum. To every person working at the charities, religious organizations, and other NGOs that are the subject of this hearing, I say this to you: thank you, and I am sorry. Thank you for providing the services and resources that our government has failed to provide to desperate people who are in need. And I am sorry that Republicans are trying to intimidate you and prevent you from carrying out this critical work. I am appalled that this hearing is being used as an attempt to target religious organizations and prevent them from serving their communities in accordance with their faith. Meanwhile, the Republican majority has not done an ounce of oversight of the Trump administration, even as Trump and his administration tear apart DHS. In January, Trump installed unelected billionaire Elon Musk as the leader of Doge and empowered him to derail and demonize critical functions across the government, including at DHS. Elon has long had massive unexplained ties to China. He did not file any kind of financial disclosure, even as he took a role in overhauling the federal government. But did the Republican majority demand any information on Musk's conflicts? Did they ask questions about his ties to the Chinese government, a topic that draws their interest in just about every context every week on this committee? No, they did not. Instead, they turned a blind eye to Doge, and Doge installed unqualified staffers across DHS, gained access to sensitive security systems, and drove off untold members of dedicated civil servants carrying out important missions to secure our homeland. Doge has been dismantling and reshaping DHS for 6 months now. Has the Republican majority held a single hearing or called a single witness to examine these massive changes to the department? No, they have not. More recently, Elon Musk and Donald Trump had a very messy breakup. Perhaps men are just too fragile and emotional for these jobs. But I digress. We did, in fact, learn a few things during this breakup. On June 6, Musk tweeted, "Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day. DJT." Wow, now that's some inside information. Elon Musk, Donald Trump's right-hand man, who spent hundreds of millions of dollars to help get Trump elected, says the president is tied to the notorious child sex predator. And look what we're talking about today. And indeed, over the past several days, Trump has moved to permanently squash the release of the Epstein files. Now, my Republican colleagues have long expressed a desire to fight human trafficking. Woohoo, talking about it today, but yet scared to call out to ask the administration to release the Epstein files. Surely that must be something we can all get behind. Surely we can all agree that if Elon Musk has evidence that Donald Trump is or has ever been involved in child sex trafficking, then Musk should be compelled to come share his evidence with this committee and the public. Now, I'm sure some of my colleagues may argue that Musk is just blowing smoke, but who's to say? Let's find out. I might have my doubts, but if you think that under oath Musk would admit he does not actually have any evidence to back up his claims, then great, let's find out. Let's do some real work on this committee. With that, I yield back.